Hey everyone, welcome to Ellen at Blackfilm. I am Ellen Winjero, and I am joined by my co-host Hakeem Graham. Hi, Huck.
Hey, how you doing, Al?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
So today we are sharing 5 past and present films that resonate with Black Lives Matter, and also films that movie studios are putting out for free. And we'll also be sharing a few our personal recommendations of ours that speak to present day. And I want to start off with a tweet that Ava DuVernay recently shared that just hit home in the best way. She said, and I quote, "We've got to understand where we've been to strategize where we're going. History helps us create the blueprint. Onward." Um, I mean, that speaks for itself, right? And reading that made me feel like I was part of an army, like an army of knowledge, if you will. And and being in the know is how you equip yourself for battle. Um, and so that hit home for me.
I agree. I'm reminded of a sign that I made for Black Lives Matter protest. It says, "That's not a chip on my shoulder. That's your foot on my neck."
Mm.
That was Malcolm X. Um, Contrary to popular belief, he was a very peaceful man, but what he believed was in violence against oneself, there is retribution, and you're entitled to that. So I just wanted to make that known because there's a lot of rhetoric around the fact that Martin Luther King was nonviolent and Malcolm X was violent,
Mm.
and that there was never a case where Malcolm X was violent. He just said that he would defend himself if need be.
As he should have, right? So the first movie that we want to talk about is Monsters and Men. This film was written and directed by Ronaldo Marcus Green. It came out in 2018, and it stars John David Washington, Denzel Washington's son, Anthony Ramos, Kelvin Harrison Jr., Shantae Adams, Nicole Bahari, just to name a few. And it follows 3 characters through the aftermath of a Black man killed by a police officer. Anthony Ramos plays the eyewitness who captured the whole thing on his camera phone. John David Washington plays an African American cop conflicted about the case, and he's the partner of the white cop who killed the Black man. And Kelvin Harrison Jr. plays a teenage bystander who considers becoming an activist in the wake of what he saw. If ever there's a movie to watch right now, this is it. One of many. But I appreciate the juxtaposition of all 3 characters. They're brought together by this one tragic act, and they now have to deal with the effects of it differently. And so, what inspires you to take a stand, right? That's the big question out of this movie. Should you take moral action, or should you, stand safely on the sidelines? And I imagine there are a lot of people right now grappling with that question of what should I do? Do I just, stay on the sidelines, or do I actually go out there and make my voice and my presence heard?
I think that's a poignant question, and I think it's a very good question. When you look deep into yourself, you think of how much you have to lose and how much you have to gain. Well, I can answer part of that question for you. You have everything to gain because if we are not free in any part of our society, none of us are free. I mean, I know that's been quoted, but I just want to make that very, very clear. Um, I've said this many a time. Once people are angry and they're finished with the neighborhood they live in, they're now going to move on to the next neighborhood. And if your neighborhood's next, guess what? Now it's your problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a proponent of dealing with the problem up front and first and foremost with all the information you have, and then go forward. That way, everybody's in the know and can deal with the situation at hand.
Agreed, agreed. And I'm drawn to the teenage bystander in this who considers becoming an activist, because right now Gen X is front and center. They are making the most noise, and I love that, considering that those are our future leaders, and those are the type of leaders that we want, the ones that are standing for what's right, what's equal. So I love seeing Gen X.
We're
Um,
we're Gen X. We're Gen X. You mean Gen Z or Gen Y?
Millennials.
Millennials. Yeah, we're Gen X. They're the millennials are
I
Gen.
thought millennials were Gen X.
No, we're Generation X.
Okay, I should know that, huh? So okay, so I was referring to millennials then. I
Yeah,
love
we're
the
Gen X.
millennials out in the front.
Yeah, we're the iPhone makers and the computer makers, and they're the users of those products. But you're right. I think it's very good that they're enthusiastic and they're lit on fire about this because they
Yeah,
should be. I think it's often forgotten, and these movies depict that. And I hope this gives them that fire.
I hope so too. I hope so too. And this, you can watch this for free. The distributor Neon has made this available on YouTube. Monsters and Men. Definitely watch that. Um, the next movie is I Am Not Your Negro. This is Raoul Peck's Oscar-nominated 2016 documentary, and it's narrated by Samuel L. Jackson, and it's inspired by James Baldwin's unfinished memoir, Remember This House. And the memoir pays tribute to the lives and assassinations of three Black leaders, and they were also Baldwin's close friends, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr. So, this is an examination of race in America, right? And it's using Baldwin's original words and archival material to tell the story. It questions Black representation in Hollywood and beyond. It confronts the deeper connections between all three leaders, their lives, and their assassination. And for those that don't really understand Black Lives Matter, the movement, this documentary connects the past of the civil rights movement to the present of Black Lives Matter. So, if you're looking for more context, you're looking for more history, this is definitely a documentary worth watching.
And I would like to add that this is just a adaptation, if you will, or the growth of the Black people movement from the '60s and the '70s. This is the morph of something a little bit more action. I think people call for action. I saw an interview the other day that an older man says to a 16-year-old. He was 31 years old. He said to a 16-year-old, he said, "This is not working. This marching and this yelling and this picketing and looting, this is not working. So you have to do it differently." Speaking to Generation Y and Z about being involved. And he said, he pointed to a gentleman behind him who was 46 years old. He said, and he was marching before me. So you have to do this differently. You have to be the change. You have to be the cog that moves this big engine. And I think, again, tying this all together, Baldwin said this many times, and he also said that we need to tie in of our white counterparts to do so. So this is a good film to reference for that.
Yeah, and PBS has made this film available free on its website via the Independent Lens series through June 21st, and it's also available on Amazon Prime. Next movie, Just Mercy, which just came out 2019 last year. It's co-written and directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, and it stars Michael B. Jordan, and he portrays legendary civil rights defense attorney Bryan Stevenson. And the film focuses on the true case of Walter McMillian, played by Jamie Foxx. He was an African-American man wrongfully convicted for the murder of a white woman in 1980s Alabama. This film speaks to systemic racism within the criminal justice system on multiple levels, right? Walter McMillian was served with a death sentence despite evidence proving his innocence, right? Just think about that for 2 seconds. And then when you think of the perspective of his defense attorney, Bryan Stevenson, what he must have encountered in terms of racism and legal and political issues as he fought for his client's life. This was a really good movie. This was amazing to watch.
This is a great movie to watch. It's also Bryan is still out there doing the same job today. So this is not just a story depicting life. It is an ongoing struggle. Also, I want to note that if you look at the underlying string between these movies, and you'll continue to see the same string, there is a tie-in. Just Mercy, I Am Not Your Negro, Monsters of Men. There's a thin line, and you will see that once you watch these movies. And I suggest you marinate once you watch them, the first three, and then move on.
Right. This is not just about entertainment. This is a learning experience. So just go in with a different lens and just be ready to learn, to listen and learn, really. So Warner Brothers has made the movie available for free on all digital platforms, including Amazon, Apple TV, Google Play, Fandango now. Uh, Next on the list, America to Me. This is a 2018 limited docuseries directed by Academy Award nominated filmmaker Steve James. And it follows students, teachers, and administrators in suburban Chicago high school over the course of the year. And it's part observational character story and part high school confessional, which I thought was a really interesting spin. And so one of the points of the 10 episode series is to recognize the need for racial equity rather than equality as it relates to education, the education system. And so the issue is, the issue being that not all individuals or groups of people should be treated the same way. So I watched this, I remember last year, and I was in awe of what I saw. I thought it was telling as it relates to racial disparities in test scores that the principal and the superintendent was not willing to comment on the disparities, and they didn't even want this documentary to be filmed to begin with. So that spoke volumes to me in terms of, what's going on inside their minds about race.
This is not uncommon.
Yeah.
From a personal experience, I went from a big African American Latino neighborhood or city of Newark, New Jersey, and I moved to Bloomfield, New Jersey I entered seventh grade, and it was a big culture shock to me. And I experienced a lot of the same things. I also watched the series, a lot of the same things, and one of which was pivotal to me was that a school advisor once told me, and I no longer went to that school advisor after that, that I shouldn't apply to college. I should apply to a trade school. And
Wow.
the school that I wanted to apply for, she said it was very ambitious of me to do so. And I said, interesting. And I never told anybody else until I got older. But she was wrong.
Clearly. Wow. Yeah. I think I started watching this again earlier this week. So there are a lot of things that are very clear in my mind about this. But, in regards to the test scores, watching the disparity between the white students and the Black students. I mean, so from 2003, white students experienced significant improvement, while the Black students showed virtually no improvement, right? So here they are preparing their Black kids less well to compete with their peers. And that went on for years in this high school in Chicago.
Well, part of the problem, and I can account for this, part of the problem is the social economical part.
Right.
The white kids solely only have to worry about studying. The Black kids oftentimes are latchkey kids, often have other siblings, often have to share their clothes, often have to share their food, often are victims of bullying because of some of the garbs they wear, because they can't keep up with the trends. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. Now, I'm not singing a siren song of poverty or pity. What I'm saying is, if you have that less to think about, then you can focus a lot more. And then there is the fact that they tell us that sometimes they tell us that we're not good enough to go into certain classes. Now, I was fortunate to be pushed into an advanced English class, so because I seemed bored, and truly I was bored. But that doesn't happen often, and I find that's interesting. Also, I think that your students, your teachers should reflect the amount of students you have. In other words, if you have a lot of Latin students, you have a lot of Black students, you have a lot of white students, you should have that same culture in the teaching environment.
And cultural competence.
Well, yes. I mean, well, that's the reason why you have the diverse staff. If you have a diverse staff, you get the cultural competence.
Yeah. And so Starz has made the 2018 series available in its entirety. Starz has actually stepped up in the way of making a lot of Black movies available for free. Next up is Selma, Ava DuVernay's Oscar-winning historical drama that stars David Oyelowo as Martin Luther King Jr. during his marches for equal voting rights in Alabama in 1966. So immediately this makes me think of what's going on in Georgia right now, right? challenges facing voters, especially those in heavily populated African American neighborhoods, and accusations of voter
Suppression.
right.
I this movie rings really difficult for me at times because I fluctuate between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and that shouldn't be the case. And one of the theories behind the assassination of both men was that they were coming close to ideologies at the end of their lives before they were taken away. And I think that's important to understand because I made a comparison of the two men fairly recently. I said, people viewed Malcolm X as a violent person or a proponent of violence, and Martin Luther King a proponent of peace. But ironically, they both were subject to the FBI investigation. They both were followed and investigated throughout their careers by the FBI. So my question is, if one was violent and one was nonviolent, then why was both of them being followed? I mean, I think by our own government, own citizens, taxpaying citizens at that. Despite the fact that Malcolm has had a darkened past, he became a very good leader and steward of peace. He just made a comment that he was not going to stand for the violence silently, and I think that was the difference. But let's not mince words. Martin Luther King came to that same conclusion toward the end of his term.
And the quote that I mentioned earlier from Ava DuVernay, it was made in regards to the Selma movie. Right. And Paramount Pictures has made the movie available for free on all digital rental outlets. And it has, it was nominated for Best Picture and snubbed in the Best Director category. Selma also features Oprah Winfrey, Common, Tessa Thompson, Niecy Nash, Lakeith Stanfield, Wendell Pierce, Carmen Ejogo. I mean, yeah, this is definitely in the top 3 movies to watch.
Yeah, and I also want to add that there was a film in 2001 with Jeffrey Wright, Terrence Howard, CCH Powder, Carmen Ejogo, Brett Jennings, called Boycott, where Jeffrey Wright played Dr. Martin Luther King and Terrence Howard played Ralph Abernathy, and Carmen obviously played Coretta Scott King. That is also something I would recommend as a supplement to Selma, just to get perspectives from a different director. This was directed by Clark Johnson, and again, 2001 TV movie series, not series, but a TV movie, not as opposed to a full-blown studio movie.
Nice. Okay. So that kind of sums up the 5 movies that we wanted to share and that movie studios are making available for free. We also have some additional personal recommendations. Now, Hawk, you and I were just talking about 13th. Well, you were talking about 13th the other day on our IG Live, and I think you said it's available on YouTube, right?
For free, yes, it is.
Okay.
Well,
okay. Freedom Riders is another good one, and that's on Amazon. 7 Seconds on Netflix.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do the Right Thing, available on Amazon and YouTube. The Hate You Give. Now, this one is Disney and Fox. They've made the movie available for free on all digital outlets, and I think it's also available on Amazon.
Yes, it is.
Right. Fruitful Station, Netflix and Amazon.
Yes.
When They See Us, Netflix. And one more I wanted to throw in there, American Son, which is also on Netflix.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say that, American Son. Yeah.
I mean, that just says it all. The one scene that pops into my mind is when her white husband, gets on her case, over the fact that their son wears cornrows, and he's questioning, why do you allow him to wear cornrows? That's seen this way, like cornrows and braids, dictate whether you're intelligent or not. Like who cares if I'm rocking cornrows or braids? Anyway. That American Son movie hit home for me.
Yeah, it's one of those things where that's still a big bone of contention with me. I think being a professional, being an educated professional, when we have conversations with our white counterparts, it's said that we have to go 90% on their side. We have to speak in a certain tone, dress in a certain way, and inflect a certain look in order to have a conversation before it's open. whereas they only have to do 10%, and that gets frustrating. And I get that. And those movies, especially Fruitvale Station, you could see how that plays out.
Mm. And so Netflix now has curated a list of TV shows, movies, and documentaries addressing racial injustice and the Black experience in America. So if you log into Netflix right now, the first page you see, it says, more than a moment, Black Lives Matter, and you have the option of viewing the collection of films or just, going to the regular homepage. So it's good to see, these major platforms acknowledging, this void and highlighting what's needed. Showtime is another platform that's doing it. It lifted its streaming paywall on 2 of its documentaries, 16 Shots and Burn, Mother Effer Burn.
Stars doing as well.
That's right. That's right. They also made available a collection of feature films, doc films, and series, including a Huey P. Newton story, Stranger Fruit, The Rape of Rusty Taylor, Emmanuel, and the list goes on. So what I wanted to insert into this conversation, while we've been highlighting movies and platforms that are making Black films available that speak to what's going on today, HBO Max has pulled Gone with the Wind from its library of films over racist depictions. It's about damn time, right? That's what I'm thinking about it. And they said that the film would return to its platform at a later date with a precursory discussion of its historical context. Throw the whole movie away, in my book, in my head, right? Like, it's a film that glorifies the antebellum South, right? And there's a whole demographic of people that look at this movie and consider it to be one of the most popular films ever made. That blows my mind.
It doesn't blow my mind, and the fact that I'm sort of expecting it. I hate to say it that way, because people are blind until it's at their doorstep. Until the quote unquote cross is burning on your lawn, it's not your problem. And I think that's the issue. So they don't see the representation in the movie because it's not something that affects them the same way. And that's not excusing folks or anything like that. I think there's just a lack of intelligence in that arena when it comes to racism and what's cruelty to our African American population.
Yeah. So this removal was sparked by John Ridley, the Academy Award-winning screenwriter of 12 Years a Slave. He he did an op-ed in the LA Times asking HBO Max to take the film out of its rotation. So I imagine at this point there are plenty of platforms scrambling to pull outdated racist content. I guess the biggest question for me is, why? I'm hoping that this isn't just a trend and they're not just hopping on the bandwagon to look politically correct, and that a year or 2 from now, they're still standing with us. They're still supporting, and standing with us in solidarity. And it's not just this fly-by-night trend.
I don't think it's a fly-by-night trend. I think, and I'm being very optimistic. I think there's a pivotal moment right now. And one of the reasons why I think so, in addition to the taking down of the movie and the upliftment of the other movies on all these other platforms, is one thing I read in an article. Kennedy Mitchum, a recent graduate of Drake University in Iowa, suggested that the definition for racism be changed for Merriam-Webster dictionary. And guess what? They changed it.
To what?
I'm glad you asked. It was to include a reference to systemic oppression or systemic racism, because that was not previously there. So I think on her part, I applaud her for her cavalier in doing so and reaching out, and I'm applauding Merriam-Webster for actually responding to her and making the change. Okay. So I think there is development. I think there's movement forward. And I'm hopeful that all of this is not in vain. It's not going to fall on deaf ears going forward. I think that this is going to be evolving change. And hopefully with these movies, with us doing these shows, and with other folks fighting the good fight, um, we'll progress, all of us. And it's not just about cops, white people or Asian people or Latin people. It's about all of us. We all have to be happy and all have the same opportunities that are afforded to some.
I love when you speak about, there's only one race there, and it's the human race. And it's
That's
going to
correct.
take the collective, right, to
Correct.
get through this together, and to listen and to learn and to educate each other and others on what it looks like. I read or saw something on Twitter recently about the movie The Help. It's
Ah,
catching a lot of heat because
yeah.
it's trending on Netflix, and people are pissed over the fact that it's trending because it's based on this kind of, savior complex, this white woman saving her black maid. And so if that's what white folks are going to to get some context, that yeah, that's not so good, I think. And so Black Twitter is up in arms.
Um, when I first watched it, I would be honest, I liked the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and not for that particular part, because just like every facet of our lives and every inch of history that we've lived, our lives, our parents' lives, our grandparents' lives, our great great grandparents' lives, there are all these interesting stories that can be told from any point of view. But we always things. And I think one of the brightest side of things was the scene where she served the lady the pie. And I think it's a pivotal move and a pivotal scene. And I'll tell you why.
Mm.
Because that scene itself guaranteed that the story, one, would be told, the book would be written, and there would be no backlash of any sort. Because now this woman would have to admit what? What she ate.
Mm. Right.
So in essence, it gave that woman that woman in that community a little bit of, should I say, peace of mind. Because another thing I've heard in the past day or two, from a lady she just exploded on the internet. She said, "I think I think this country should worry more that we just want equality and not revenge."
Oh, right. That was a powerful, powerful statement. I saw that 6-minute video, and I think I watched it a good 3, 4 times.
I still watch it. I watched it this morning.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
why
Right.
it's
Right.
fresh in my mind. But
Yeah.
that's exactly my point, and that speaks to the movie To Help. Now I understand that people are calling for this and people have denounced it and all that stuff, but think of it in a global sense, in a sense of what this movie represented as a whole, not the individual moments.
Sure. Right. And I get that. But for the white person that's trying to figure out what white privilege looks like, the argument on Twitter is that might not be the best film to show,
No,
to highlight.
no, not at all.
And so that's the perspective that I get, that I understand, but I get yours as well.
It's a supplemental. But
Yeah.
the really weird thing of it is, half of that movie, the first half of that movie, is all white privilege.
Yeah.
They
Right.
all have maids. They all have maids, have their own bathrooms. How many people at home right now have two bathrooms? There are people that have one, two
Mm.
bedrooms, one bathroom. These people have huge houses in the suburbs or in the country with two bathrooms or three bathrooms and a maid's bathroom. So let's check the privilege.
I like the rolling of the neck. And so, really quickly, when we did our IG Live earlier this week, you mentioned a few other movies. I don't know if you remember, but that I thought were relevant. Do you mind just running them down really quick? Hopefully, you remember. I think Amistad was one of them.
Amistad, Fruitville Station, which we mentioned, and actually The Color Purple. I didn't mention that, but I thought The Color Purple would be good to watch as well. And that one's a learning one for white folks as well.
Yeah. Also, Bamboozled just popped
Bam,
in my mind.
yeah,
Um,
bamboo,
right,
yeah.
right. And also, what I saw recently online, the Black Panthers, what was it? I think the Vanguard. Is it the Vanguard Chronicles? I'm not sure, but I think Black Panther movies are good to watch.
Um,
The list goes on. I mean, right now, if you just Google what to watch, which Black films to watch that resonate with Black Lives Matter, you'll get a list of movies, TV shows, literary works. I mean, there's no reason that to say that you are not educated on what's going on today.
and also we have a channel or streaming channel dedicated for just that. It's the Urban Movie channel.
Black films, right?
Yep. So
Yep.
it's all Black films. I mean, you can find anything from entertaining comedy to something that may teach you a couple of things about what the struggle is about.
Here, here. I mean, so that's all I have. Hawk, any last words before we sign off?
No, I think I've said enough.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Ellen at Black Film. We will be back every Thursday, next Thursday at 7 p.m. And we look forward to seeing everybody and chatting about Black films.
Yep. Peace.
Over and out.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Hawk. Have a good night.
You too.